take a seat, please. First, I'm going to let you know that this event is being filmed. And if you have any objection to that, if you could please let the cameraman know in the back. They'll just raise their hand. And tell them not to film. Great. So welcome, everyone, to this wonderful collaborative event. I'm Gretchen Hoffmeister, the Executive Director of the Hotchkiss Library of Sharon. And there are many people to thank today. First, we are so grateful to Troutbeck for making this amazing space available to us and opening it up to the community. Thank you to its owners, Charlie and Anthony Chaseholm, for welcoming us today. And a big shout out to Blake, who's hiding back here. Blake Myers, the Programming, Marketing, and Cultural Liaison at Troutbeck, who's taking care of many of the details today. This program was the brainchild of the library's new volunteer group, the Guild. The Guild was formed to help us expand our programming and outreach into the community now that we have restored and expanded our beautiful home on the Green in Sharon. The Guild's co-chairs, Julie Traeger, back there, and Abby Nova, over here, worked very hard to bring this all together. They have lots more in store, so be sure to check out our website, follow us on social media, and we have some information in the back by the door. You can see what other great programs they have planned for all of us this fall and winter. So thank you, Julie and Abby. And I invite you to come visit us at our beautiful new old library. You haven't visited it. It's really beautiful. From Sharon or not, you are most welcome there at any time. And also support your own local library if you're from another town. And last but not least, it was Linda Quella, a new member of our library board of directors, who gathered all of these amazing panelists that you'll be hearing from this afternoon. Linda, along with her husband James, is the founder of Tri-Corner Feed, which stands for Food Equity, Education, and Distribution, a new nonprofit that seeks to empower individuals and our Tri-Corner community to develop resilient food systems that support the health and well-being of all people and the planet. So thank you, Linda, for bringing us all together today for this important conversation.
Thanks, Gretchen. Wow, I'm blown away by the turnout. Thank you. Just filled with gratitude that you guys would all take the time to come and join us in this conversation. We are going to spend just a few minutes introducing ourselves and sharing with you a little bit about our journey into the food system and why we each individually find it important. I'm going to let each one of these individuals introduce themselves. I, as Gretchen said, am Linda Quella. I'm going to be your moderator tonight. My journey into this food realm started 8 years ago when my husband and I moved to the Sharon area to start a pasture-based livestock farm. Our initial goal was to create a farm that raised animals humanely and also built an economically sustainable farm business for our community, and made sure that we had created a livelihood that would support our farm workers. And during this time, I think we quickly realized, right away, that one of the main focuses that we had to pay attention to was the environmental impact of what we were doing. So we spent a lot of time on our farm figuring out what we needed to do to improve our soil health. And we started implementing a lot of practices that were really fun to learn about and really made a dramatic increase and improvement in our production. But all of this took a lot of work, and a lot more labor than we ever expected. And so what we found through this process is we were producing amazing food that was really expensive and actually inaccessible to large segments of our population. And we just looked at it and said, this can't, food is a basic human right. This can't be the answer for us. And so we decided to redeploy our resources into this Tri-Corner Feed. And our objective is to try and help remove hurdles for other farmers in our area and to broaden access to good food to all members of our community, and to do things like this, which is educate our community and come together and all bring more of you into this food space.
Yes. Hi everyone. I'm Schmidt. I'm the food program director at the Northeast Community Center, NWCT in Millerton. And we offer community resources to a 6-town service area in the northeast corner of Dutchess County. Transportation service support, youth programs, childcare, case management, housing access, and food programs, food access programs. And currently, our food access programs, as you'll hear more about tonight, are working towards being sort of more of a community food access hub for our area. So we currently offer a weekly food pantry that has a fresh food focus. We'll talk more about that today. A choice-based shopping system, and we also offer home delivery. We run a summer food service program for the Beavertech School District, so that's free breakfast and lunch for kids in the summer when school isn't in service. We have a summer youth employment program for teenagers called Food Futures that focuses on farm-to food access skill building. And we are facilitating a regional coalition called the Tri-Corner Nutrition Security Coalition that really focuses on bringing partners together in the food space. We have healthcare providers, we have farmers, we have food access providers, funders, all in a conversation, a little bit louder, all in a conversation about how to increase the strength and equity in our regional food system in the northeast corner of Dutchess County, the southern part of Columbia County, and the northwest corner of Litchfield County. And yeah, my own background is through farming to nutrition to now working on a master's in public health nutrition, so really thinking about, sort of as Linda said, this trajectory of how we are taking food production and food accessibility into account when we think about community wellness.
I'm Sarah Chase. I am a third-generation farmer in Pine Plains, New York. Chaseholm Farm is a dairy farm. We've diversified and we raise beef cattle, hogs. I have a farm store there. I see some familiar faces from the farm store. Yeah, we also have a lot of events at our farm. So we host folks at Chaseholm and get the community together. Yeah, I think I'm mostly here as a farmer to be the voice of livestock farmers that are interested in participating in the food system in this way.
Hi everyone. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Maggie. I'm one of the co-founders and co-owners of Rocksteady Farm in Millerton, New York. It's wonderful to see some of our CSA members here and neighbors and friends. And we are more than just a farm in this community. We're also a nonprofit, we're a co-op, and our focus has always been food access and farmer training, specifically for queer and trans BIPOC community members who want to be farmers, as well as just queer and trans farmers in general who might want to grow at a smaller scale. And we've done a lot of work locally with local pantries, with NECC. We also work with Neighbors Helping Neighbors in Anglendale, doing food access work there. And we also work with a lot of people in New York City. So we're kind of we focus in 2 regions, Hudson Valley as well as New York City, where we feed specifically the LGBTQ community, specifically low-income folks who do not otherwise have access to the high-quality produce that we provide. We're an organic farm. We have amazing tasting vegetables, I have to say. And we want to make sure that the folks in our community have that access to that and not just those who can afford it. So we do a lot of work with health centers in New York City, LGBTQ community centers, amazing Black-led, trans-led community orgs in the city. And it's really important for us to always kind of keep social justice at the forefront of our work, both within our own co-op as a multiracial, centering specifically 5 hog farmers, as well as who we feed. And me personally, I'm also a 3rd generation farmer, as well as a 1st generation farm owner, which I'm proud to say. And I've been in this work since I was a kid, so 40 years. And I kind of was brought into it always through a racial justice lens. My dad and my mom were very, very strong advocates of racial justice and started doing food work in Boston when I was about 6. So conversations around the intersections of race and food have always been part of our conversations at the dinner table. So it's something I care deeply about, and I love talking to people about it and bringing in more people into this work because it's incredibly inspiring every day, and I'm really grateful to be here. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Renee Giroux. I'm the manager of the Northwest Connecticut Regional Food Hub. We're a nonprofit aggregator working with over 30 farms spanning from northwest corner to west of the River Valley in Connecticut up towards Great Barrington and a little bit over the border in New York State. We have a multitude of food security programs that we work with, and I'll get more in detail with that a little later on. I'm also a farmer. I've been an organic horticulturalist focused on environment-controlled ag systems for the past 20 years. And I found my way into kind of the food security world about in 2013 when I started doing a little bit of research on food hubs and what was happening within the system. And then I met this amazing organization called Partner Sustainable Healthy Communities, in which was doing a feasibility study throughout our region and working with over 200 farms to come up with some statistics on what was needed in our area in order to grow our ag sector. So I've been at the helm and working with them and the Council of Governments since 2017, and we are here 7 years later. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you, Linda, and thank you to the organizers for hosting us here tonight. What a beautiful, beautiful space. I've only had the opportunity to dine here once, and it was incredible. So I'm happy to see that you're hosting cultural programs. My name is Sarah Salem, and I am the founder of the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition. And we are a transdisciplinary coalition that works across the Hudson Valley to bring together food systems partners, all the way from production side to the retail side to the consumer side of food, in order to increase the transformative capacity of individuals and organizations working on widespread, systemic, sustainable change in the Hudson Valley food system. And the key to what we do is that we try to embody co-creation. We try to center place, which is here in the Hudson Valley, but we also try to work translocally to understand and really kind of accept that the food system isn't kind of contained within our colonial bounds. So we have to take examples from other parts of the world, even if not nationally, just nationally, to really accomplish the work that we're doing here. And my entrance into food systems started as probably many of yours, as an avid eater. I love food. But it wasn't until I had one single season of farming that I really dug in to wanting to know more and understanding the value of food and the value to ensuring that every single person, in our communities and beyond has access to, nutritionally dense, quality food that we're able to produce here thanks to our thoughtful work of the farmers and the community members that help to support those farms. And so after that one single season of farming, which will be called my summer of farming in my book, I started working in the emergency food access realm as a fundraiser, program developer. And so that's really what kind of started my passion for ensuring equitable access to foods and understanding, the kind of policy angle to it all, and the power of local constituencies and communities in ensuring that we're all well fed.
And I'm here to kind of bring in the bigger picture. So, do we have any quantum physicists in the room? No, so no one, are you? No one can tell me that I'm wrong, but you can if you feel like it. There's this phenomenon that cannot be explained by classical physics called quantum entanglement. And I'm not an expert by any means whatsoever, but it struck me as interesting when I recently read about the way that within an atom's spin and in quantum entanglement, when another atom is caught in another atom's spin, they're forever connected. And that really brings us back to the idea of this translocality and the way that we are connected to each other, our systems are connected to each other, and the way that we're able to then build networks to strengthen communities with that same kind of phenomenon in mind, whether we're close or far or wherever we're located in the world. So I just want to have everyone's, thinking about quantum entanglement as we have this panel here about food systems.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for introducing yourselves. Salem, that was perfect, actually, even in how I'm going to take the next part of our conversation. I want to spend a few minutes talking about why we felt it was so important to have a community session, to have a conversation about this. And we, of course, hope this is one of many to come. This is just like the kickoff, so hopefully you guys will be really enthusiastic about this and continue the conversation. But I also will give an overview of what we hope to accomplish today. So first, I wanted to kind of share with you my reflection when we closed our farm and we started this. I spent a lot of time reading and researching and reflecting and talking to people and trying to figure out, what do I do with all this information that I'm taking in? And I realized that the part that I was missing was this connectivity, this outreach to a community, to have people share these ideas and build upon them and take them to the next level. So that part of this journey is something that I feel so grateful for, and I hope that you guys all feel the same in terms of, I get it. I mean, take a look around. We have a lot of power in this room in terms of knowledge and experience, and we have this vast array of people in our area. And I think that if we all start figuring out how we can contribute to this food system, there's things that all of us can do, and it'll be a meaningful representation in our community to build a strong food system. I did want to ask all of you to just, take a moment and reflect and be part of this conversation. Why are you here? Think about what brought you here today. Think about what you just heard from this group of panelists. They're here to share so much experience with you. And I think it's important to sort of go at it with intention. What we hope to accomplish today is just to give you a broad overview of the issues that we're facing in our Tri-Corner community. I think that each one of the people here brings something different to the table, and I think you'll get a lot out of that. You'll keep hearing from us that we need a food system that is resilient, and the resiliency needs to come across in 3 dimensions. We need to be resilient and sustainable across economic, social, and environmental factors. No one of those is more important. And I think that when you consider the issues that we face to have a strong food system, it's a bit overwhelming and it's really complex. And I myself get quite overwhelmed by it. And I ask myself, all right, well, the environmental crisis had me feeling paralyzed in the same way. It's so overwhelming. And so then I step back and I break it down. And if I can break it down into small little pieces, I feel like I've done things over the last, decade to make a difference. And I think that that's what we're looking for in this community. What can we do to strengthen our regional food system? What can we do to make good food accessible to everyone?
building a regional food system doesn't mean that we're going to provide 100% of the food for our community. And when I talk about local or regional, like to me, there's no like fine lines. Like I wouldn't be able to tell you what geography I'm talking about. But I feel like you know it. You know if something is within your distance. And so I don't think that it's about us necessarily in our small tri-corner area, certainly not producing all the food that we're going to eat. But there are some studies, like some of the ones I'm most fascinated by are research going on to say what can different regions produce in their environment. And in fact, the Food Solutions group of New England has a study. I have just a few excerpts out of it, but they did a study, a very detailed study, and they are targeting to have 50% of the food in New England produced by the year 2060. Today, that number is 12%. Like, what are we going to do to get there? Like, it's not going to happen if all of us aren't participating in this. So I think these things are just really interesting. I think you guys can be empowered, and we'll bring you along for the ride. So first, I want to talk a bit with Jordan. I don't know, is it hard to see us back in the back? Should we stand up?
Yes.
Great. Is that better? Feels a little strange, like we're gonna just be like here singing.
And you all have, we're going to do this and then do Q&A, right?
Yeah, sorry. So thank you. We're going to take time to ask some questions about each panel member, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. So of course, if you guys have a burning question, I want this to be interactive. Raise your hand. If it can wait till the end, then let's go through that process. But certainly, I don't want to impede anyone's creativity in this process. All right, so we're going to start. Jordan, the emergency food system has failed significantly to reduce food security. In 2022, food insecurity in the United States was at 12%. And in 1995, or actually 1998, just a couple of years after they started measuring food security, it was at 11.8%. So it's in 25 years virtually unchanged. We haven't gotten at really reducing food insecurity. You've done a lot of great things at your pantry, and I'm just hoping you can share with us, like, what do you think is the most important programs and how you can get at having a meaningful reduction in food insecurity?
Thank you. I didn't know you were going to be into those thoughts, and I was actually thinking about when you were asking me sort of what contribution food pantries can play in this community. I think one of the interesting things, like Linda was saying, the food pantry and food banking systems is one of the things I think often gets a little bit confused. Food banks are the warehouse distribution system that helps distribute food to food pantries, which are the community resource point. And so the food banking, national food banking and food pantry system really got started in the late 70s, took off in the 80s with a rise in income inequality and a decrease in the social safety net around food in this country. And over the 40-year period, we've gotten a lot more, in some ways, efficient and effective at distributing quantities of food, billions of pounds of food to millions of people. But like Linda's saying, food security actually in the population overall has not markedly improved despite that increased distribution of food in the charitable food system. We have the federal food support system, which is SNAP, and the Child Nutrition Program, and then we have charitable food, which is actually these days kind of a hybrid, often state, sort of a public-private mixture of funding sources. And when we see those kinds of discrepancies, right, when we're doing a lot of this distribution work and we're not seeing a figure like food security, community food security change markedly, that is a wonderful moment to ask questions, right? We want to put our curiosity caps on and say, where should we be looking? Where should we be moving? Where does our creative energy need to be? And I actually think food pantries have a really important potential role to play in thinking about how we get to more of those root cause connections, questions, supports for food security, because like Salem was saying, this is relational, right? And I take a lot of my inspiration from someone named Katie Martin, who runs an organization called More Than Food. Her book is called Reinventing Food Banks and Food Pantries. I highly recommend it. I know a lot of people here I'm seeing are in food pantry system in this area, so appreciate you being here, and feel free to chime in. There's a lot of expertise here. But one of the things that Katie Martin talks about is this kind of shift from transactional pounds of food to numbers of people to relational. We're creating those networks, we're creating that community conversation, we're trying to understand what community nourishment looks like. We're offering that tangible support for nutrition security, for culturally relevant food, for fresh, nourishing food. We're kind of moving from that shelf staple pantry items and an emergency 3-day provision to more of a fresh food focus. We're doing that in a context in which people get to choose more and more of their food. So it's a space that emphasizes dignity, that emphasizes sovereignty, and then it is a community building space. It's figuring out how to offer more of those wraparound services in the food pantry setting to make it kind of a community wellness hub, so that people come into the food pantry and they get nourishing food that meets their needs, but they also get an understanding of what additional resources are available to them, what kinds of connections they can make in their community that will support their overall food security, and then together we can understand more about what our regional needs are to advocate for some of those broader policy and systemic changes.
Great. I actually, in the handouts that you guys have, you also have some data that just reflects the food insecurity levels in our Tri-Corner community, and it also is at 12%. And I encourage you to look at the data too. It's really shocking to see some of the towns, like the pantries in our area are doing such important work. And there's also another little tidbit for you in there to understand the magnitude of what these pantries are facing right now. It gives you a sense of how many individual clients they have and the efforts that they're making every day, and it's not getting any better. One of the things that I was super excited about, I know actually I think every single person on this panel participates in some way with getting good food from farmers into the pantry system. And I know that you and your organization have been like innovative in your approach, and it's been a meaningful impact. But to me, I'm curious to hear what you hear from your clients in terms of the difference.
Yeah, so we do, and I think multiple pantries in this area also participate in, we have increasingly, NWCT food programs have been around for about 10 years. We haven't run our own food pantry until the last 3, when some of the pandemic-related changes happened and some food pantries went out of business and were closed in Millington, we kind of stepped in. But we have been always thinking about how we bring more fresh, regionally produced food into the food access system or food pantry system. And so our food pantry does really prioritize working directly with farmers, many of the farmers here. Thanks to grant funding that we are actively pursuing all the time, we are able to pay, we work with farmers that are small businesses, and we work with nonprofit farms to source a lot of that food. And these are long-term season by season relationships that we've developed that have become incredibly important to our food pantry. And I think, as Linda's saying, they both increase the quality of the food. So we offer lots of different fresh produce and proteins in our food pantry, which also increases your resource needs in terms of food storage, in terms of your whole system for getting and storing and distributing food has to shift to be able to do that. So that's a very person-intensive process, but it plays out really visibly in the experience that people have when they come to our food pantry. So it's nutritional quality. It's also supporting farmers in this area in providing food. Being able to provide food, like Linda was saying, some of the really exciting sort of experimental techniques that farmers are using in this area to deal with climate change, to work on paying their staff a living wage, those things come at a cost, right? So they can't necessarily, they have to make an appropriate price for their food, and we want to be actually part of supporting those farmers in the food access system as well. So it's important for the nutrition quality in our pantry. It's also important for supporting the farms in the region. And then a huge impact that we've had at Rocksteady, we've worked probably almost for 10 years together And we have a meeting every winter that is it's a debrief about what happened this season, what went well, what was challenging, what should we plan on for next year, what should we be planting for next year. And especially as the demographics change in this area, which there is, there's shifting, especially with immigration right now, shifting cultural dynamics in this community that are happening at a pretty fast rate. And being able to be responsive to people's cultural food needs is hugely impactful in the style of service that we offer. So we've been, planting experiments, types of produce that's grown in Central America, seeing how well that grows in greenhouses here, those kinds of things to really see if we can provide appropriately for the people who are using our services.
It's pretty impressive, and I think that the way that you're working together with the farmers, I mean, one of the most important things to me is creating markets for farmers, like creating the sustainable platform. Like another data points I put in a footnote here is one of our pantries gave me some stats that ground beef, if they're buying it from the food bank, costs $3.66 a pound. And from the farm, it's $10 a pound. I mean, we can't ask our farmers to subsidize this. I mean, they're basically already struggling to have a living wage. Another example was chicken at $2 a pound versus $6 a pound for a farmer. So we need to figure out ways to get farmers a sustainable market and not ask them to be the ones to subsidize or to create programs to fix this. One of the other really interesting areas that I've come to talk to Jordan about, and I've been fascinated by this, there's another way of looking at our demographics in our area, and the United Way outlines it as ALICE. It's asset limited, income constrained, and employed. These are people that cannot afford a basic survival budget. Our community has 26% of people fit into that level. So between the people that are food insecure and the people that fit into this ALICE community, we're talking close to 40% of everybody that you walk past in our community is struggling to get good food on their table. So Jordan has started looking at efforts like what can we do beyond the pantries to try and make good food affordable to everyone. And so I'd love to hear a little bit, Jordan, about the ideas you have for a fair pricing program and where that stands.
Yes, so this is a little bit of a fun because Linda and I are working very closely together on this project. But we are currently doing a research project, community research project that we're calling a Regional Fair Food Assessment. It's in collaboration with Tri-Corner Feed, NWCT, and also Cheney. So the University of New York are our research partners. And we're funded by the USDA partially and also by the Foundation for Community Health more locally. And we have, for the last year, we have been building a research process, so a survey project to ask farmers questions about what their needs are from a sort of community food program and pricing perspective, and then also a community survey, which we're just about to launch, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, that will be asking participants, all the, many different incomes of participants, community members, sort of about their challenges. It's going to actually be kind of an updated needs assessment in terms of our food security situation overall, but also looking into what kinds of fair pricing, fair access, both in terms of price and types of spaces people want to purchase groceries in, or ways that people want to buy groceries, because as I'm sure all of you know, we don't have a great grocery provision system for almost anyone in this area actually right now. And so we're going to launch that community survey in the next couple of weeks. We're hoping to get over 100 responses. And then we've also been doing stakeholder interviews with organizations that are running these sliding scale grocery programs or fair access grocery programs throughout the US and Canada. We've learned a lot of really interesting things and gotten a lot of really creative input into sort of what options are out there, all the way from brick and mortar locations where people are purchasing groceries on a sliding scale to sort of local food access cards that people are using in a variety of locations, all types of different strategies. And it really has been also a community process developing the questions for these surveys. And then we're hoping once we get the data, we do have to write up a feasibility study, a program feasibility study for the USDA, but we're also hoping to get out into the community and present the data and have more conversations like this about what kinds of programs can we envision as a collective that would really meet our grocery needs, many different grocery needs, right? Because there's so many different ones. in terms of providing farmers a living wage and fair pricing, and also making sure that consumers can access foods that are produced regionally, that are culturally relevant and that are accessible also spatially for them.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Does someone have a silver Forester license plate KHE1222? You are blocking. Anyone? It's me.
Thanks, Jordan. I think that the results of the fair pricing program or the feasibility study will be really interesting to work with the community. You know, I think, as Jordan said, we'll be anxious to share the results with you, because if we do what we hope to do with that, which is to provide farm food to a broader segment of our community, we're going to need a lot of resources helping. And we're going to have to put our heads together to figure out what that's going to look like. All right, let's turn a little bit of our focus to farming. Sarah, you and your family have been, like you said, farming for generations. Thank you. Even after a significant decline in the dairy farms in your area, you have been working to make your farm relevant and resilient and do all the things. I watch you. I can't believe what you guys do over there. But can you share with the broader audience what it's taken to do to build this resilience on your farm, both environmentally, economically, and socially?
Yeah. So my father was a conventional dairy farmer, and that means he was shipping milk to a cooperative. It was, it's not an organic farm. It was just selling milk into the commodity food system. And I learned a lot of things growing up on the farm, a lot of the animal, how to take care of animals, how to care for the land, but also that it was going to be nearly impossible to run a farm the way he did anymore. Because you can't be a small dairy and make it in the same way anymore. Dairies were just getting bigger. The costs were rising. I'm being told to speak louder. Yes, and so when I was looking into, or sort of like dabbling in coming back home after college, my brother had already started making cheese on our family's land, using milk that was produced in the area, but not, or there was someone that was in between my father and I before I took over the farm. And so that was like an exciting paradigm shift, because there was a different type of market to sell milk to. And I started learning a lot about grass-based dairying. I had friends in this area who were starting organic veggie farms on a smaller scale and, feeding people in a really relational way. And I was watching them and realizing that maybe this was something you could do with livestock too. It never had occurred to me really until being in college, and I lived in a co-op system, and we were making choices about the type of food we wanted to buy. We were like, we want local milk, do we want organic, are we gonna support companies that have like certain types of political practices even? We were really thinking about it and trying to be engaged. And all this was kind of awakening my little dairy farmer self. And I thought maybe, okay, if I can't dairy farm the way my father did, maybe I can still do it if I do it differently. I have a huge learning curve. I'm just about to be my 11th year dairy farming at Chaseholm, and it's been a real process of learning how to do what I do. But we started by using adaptive planned grazing. That's what we call it. It's like a rotational grazing system. So the cows are moving through the landscape and they're not returning to any one place until the grass has recovered. That's the most important part, that we're able to facilitate the plant's expression in order to maximize both their root health, which is like holding the soil and holding water in the soil. It's also giving space for microbiology to live and eat and thrive. And these processes all happening together are supporting each other. And like Linda was saying, watching it happen on her farm, I've seen a similar thing where we're able to build resilience in a, environmental way by managing our land with our animals in this manner. Yeah, and let's see,
No, that's great. Did you have other, in terms of other aspects as you brought on employees and other members of your farm team, like how hard is it to get, pay a fair wage and
sure, I was like,
don't
don't you want
work?
the economic part?
Yeah, economic.
Yeah, so I think my first 5 years really just delving into how to actually do this thing and how to sort of take what I knew and then also adapt it to this new way of farming. And it was definitely, I felt really grateful to have the market that I did, but we started our farm store as soon as we started the farm in 2013. And that became a growing place for, interacting with customers, became a really important part of our annual income. And, right, we're adding employees and trying to make working on the farm an attractive job, trying to convince people, mostly, by making a great, a work environment that they enjoy, but also being able to pay them enough and have housing for them. Have a place where people want to stay and come back and sort of invest their lives as well. Because that's, what really feels like it needs to happen in order for farming to continue to thrive, or these are challenges we're facing. But yeah, I think the sort of the second half of my 11 years has been mostly about trying to reach for that economic sustainability. And I've gotten wiser, and sort of, been able to look at my books better and follow things that have worked, but mostly it's a lot about reaching out to customers and trying to create direct relationships and increase the amount of food we're selling in that way. That's been hugely impactful for just creating a sustainable bottom line. Additionally, we were talking about working with food pantries. We've been able to participate in some grant funding through the Glenwood Center, where we're in relationship with food pantries. We work with Dutchess Outreach in Poughkeepsie and also the Northeast Community Center here in nearby Millington. And we provide, ground beef, dairy, and other proteins, sometimes pork. But it's been a really amazing relationship, and it not only, it's really exciting to be able to be selling food into that system. I feel like it's not only, I don't know, I'm trying to say that it's sort of a balm to a farmer who has a hard time making a living, to be able to have the opportunity to bring food to that space feels, it's really important for my experience of being a community member in this place. So I wanted to.
No, thank you. That, I really appreciate you sharing that. I'd be interested on a couple fronts before we go to the next. One is with just the rains in this area, the changing climate conditions, how has your farm upheld in the storms that have come through, and what are you learning, watching, how it's affecting your land?
Yeah, I mentioned the way we talk about our grazing system, we call it adaptive planned grazing, because it really sort of requires this daily observation. You don't know what the season's going to throw at you when it begins. You don't know week to week, right? You're just trying to sort of keep up and make the best decisions possible. And so, we have, we try to really be responsive to what we're seeing and what we have seen, so that we can manage the land in the best way. But being a livestock farmer, being someone who's mostly relying on a perennial crop system, so the cows are 100% grass-fed, we're certified organic. My farm is primarily in perennial grasses, and that's already a good start for being able to manage loss of water well. And last year was a drought, we had to, like in those moments, you have to really extend your rotation so the cows are not coming back to one place for a long time. In a wet time, it's interesting, you know, depending on the drainage of your soils. This is all like micro-specific to like one field or another or part of a field. Might have to exclude pieces, but being a perennial farmer has meant I've had a little more, I've had an easier time in a wet season than lots of folks who like big veggie farmers have had a harder time than I have. Yeah, or folks who are, you know, tilling the soil and growing row crops like corn and soy for livestock.
I think this, you know, just hearing what they are faced with as farmers in our area and the fact that they are implementing systems to improve and still get food to you, it's just such a meaningful, we don't have food if we don't have farmers. And if you want farmers that are producing the kind of food that you want to eat, then you really, you know, I really appreciate understanding and learning about the challenges that are facing so that we as a community, when they have challenges, can step up and do what we can to help them. I think one of the other things in our community is that we struggled with on our farm is getting a market, a retail market that was sustainable, and that meant that people were coming on a predictable basis to our farm to buy food. And so I struggled. We couldn't get the economics to work, and I wonder, you know, if you could share, Sarah, like the challenges of having a retail market, and do you feel supported by your community, and are people showing up?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So the farm store that we operate it's changed a lot throughout the years. But during COVID is when it really had it was sort of a boom. And that was, you know, amazing and exciting, also overwhelming, and it made us wonder if that kind of like relationship would last, or if this was a fleeting thing that would go away when, you know, the overall like picture changed. And I mean, like even on like if it would rain on a Saturday, we'd be like, oh, we have a lot. There's a sales are down today, you know, those kind of things. But I do, you know, our farm store, we tried really hard to stock lots of different foods from other farms as well in order to, you know, like have what you might need. So if you're coming out for milk, you know, we're also going to have fresh bread. We also have produce. And those are all like tactics we've developed to try to keep people coming back and make sure they're satisfied when they come. Additionally, we can add that we started a CSA this past year. Our 8th month or something I'm running in. But that was in direct response to exactly what Linda was saying. We needed like a sustainable, recurring, predictable income stream that was closer to that retail dollar. And so I replaced most of my wholesale, you know, almost only selling wholesale to food pantries now, instead of restaurants and other markets for my pork and beef products. Everything else is going to direct to consumer. And that's been an awesome change for us, and it's just, yeah, it feels so much more like safe in a way. You know, we know these people, you know, we're like developing relationships with them and learning about what they do with our food. It's really exciting.
Thank you. Maggie, turning a little bit to you. I only recently connected with Maggie. I've been very excited to hear more about what they have done at the farm. I can feel the energy and the passion for building food systems that you have just in exchanging emails, like just what are the things that you've done to not harm people. But it seems really complex and nuanced and layered, and I want to try a little bit to peel back the onion in this conversation to kind of give everyone a flavor for that. Can you share more about Rocksteady and how you and your farm have worked to address economic inequalities in our community?
Yeah. So I think Rocksteady does a lot of things. We're very diverse. Kind of like our crops. We have a lot of crops that we grow. We grow about 75% or 75 different types of vegetables. And in many ways that allows us to be resilient within kind of the changing weather and climate, the diversity that we see in our fields and the cover crops and the flowers. All of that adds to our farm being more resilient in this challenging time. And I think our business model and now our nonprofit model is also really diverse and a little bit complicated for people to understand. And I think that also lends to the kind of the queerness that we are, which is sometimes you don't understand it, but somehow we're doing a lot and it seems to be working really well, and like we're being very well received by the community that we feed, as well as the people that we welcome onto the farm and train, and the community that we serve. But yeah, we do a lot. So when talking about inequalities and within the food system, I think, most kind of concretely, our CSA has always been a sliding scale model, which is a little bit different than all other CSAs. So we serve people who pay a few dollars for a share, if they can do that, sometimes $0. And then we have people who pay $40 for that same share. And that range allows us to meet the needs of a really, really broad community in terms of just the class diversity that we have in this area. We've also expanded to raise money and fundraise, and we have a lot of grants that we get so that we can have fully subsidized shares for people. So that helps, our customer base and our community who are suffering in economic ways just be able to at least get food on the table. But then we also do a lot of advocacy work and training because I think it's all interconnected. We have a training program that is specifically catered to queer and trans and BIPOC people for a reason, right? Because there's a real need for that in this area. And there are a lot of people who want to get into farming who don't feel comfortable in a rural space, who never have, or maybe they kind of left rural spaces looking for refuge in cities, and crave nature and crave kind of being in communities like this, but don't see people like them. And I think we're trying to create more opportunities for those farmers to feel welcomed into this community. And that is not an easy task because it comes along with all these other issues such as housing, which is one of the main things that beginner farmers in this area and established farmers who are trying to keep employees really, really suffer with. And I think, it's not anything new, right? Like, I grew up housing insecure, and most of my farming community when I was a kid was housing insecure, and I've been kind of talking about this for 10 years in this community, and it's just getting worse, to be honest. And now with COVID, and you have this huge shift towards people moving here from New York City, and an Airbnb culture, that little housing that we did have 5 years ago is now extinct. And I think that has been actually a barrier for these brilliant people who want to be farming, who have these incredible passions around farming in the way that our world needs them to be farming, right? Like indigenous practices that are way more resilient than the farms that are in a lot of areas. And we need more people who want to be farming in this area, because that type of resiliency that they're cultivating is what the earth needs as well. And I think if we can't house those people, then they can't live here, they can't build these communities and have farms that we want to thrive, right? And I think the level to which that is an issue is there are farms that are friends of mine, they had to downscale because they didn't have anywhere for their employees to live. They have the skills, they have the business, they have the model, they're downscaling and growing less food because there's nowhere for them to live. That's heartbreaking to me. And I think that issue, let alone just being able to live here in the first place, is something that is so interconnected to everything, right? Because we can talk about issues around food and affordable food, but also just broadly, kind of what is the economic situation in our community right now, so that farmers can thrive, so that people who we feed can thrive. And I think, yeah, it takes a lot of community conversations like this to really kind of bridge and understand what's going on. And I think, I'm in this room today, but also yesterday and today, there were community gatherings at farms run by Black and brown people in this community that had hundreds of people at them. And that is a powerful thing. And I think we need to be thinking about how can we support those people who have a lot of energy to give and are creating incredibly magical spaces. And that's our responsibility, right? We're all in the same zip code, and we all have the responsibility to be thinking about what's our role in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that you've just touched on something really important. I mean, we reached out to everyone we could, and we don't have that kind of showing. People are not feeling safe in our realm of bringing people into this community. And so, I'd be interested, what do you think we can do as a community to help bring the full community together at the table?
What can we do? I mean, I think people thinking about what they're passionate about is always a good place to start, right? Because if you're going to be in this for the long haul, right, this long game, you've got to think about what you truly connect to within the food system. That might be housing, that might be cooking, that might be land access if you're someone who has a lot of land. I think about what resources and what passions you have, and then talk to people about how you can make an impact. Just ask your farmer, what do you need? And then, they might say a generator. Because that's what we needed. We just invested $30,000 in a generator so that we could be more resilient in the intense storms. And you don't necessarily know that's what is needed until you ask. And I also think it's important to know that just because we're not all kind of in community in the way of being actually at the same table, there's a lot of actual polarization in our community, right? And that's okay sometimes. We don't have to all be at the same table to actually create a thriving community. You can still shift your resources and you can still make a difference without actually having all the relationships to people who are different from you. And I think that that's okay too.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that you had talked about is just the power of networks and community. And I think you mentioned in your, the housing issue and the fact that you knew someone, a lot of these connections that we can make, I think, to get to know the farmers and really understand their needs. And the other thing that you had mentioned was just the challenges of existing farmers, that there is new farmers coming in and like myself not making it, but there's a lot of resources just being spent at creating new things instead of fixing what's already there. Do you maybe can talk a little bit about those challenges?
Yeah, I think so. I think, NECC has been doing such amazing work for how long? 20 years? Yeah, a long time.
It's been more than 20 years since
Yeah, and I think and they're still struggling to to kind of get people, like, you know, good jobs in our community doing the work that they want to do, right? Like, there's a lot of need that exists within really established nonprofits in this area, as well as, you know, farms that are just starting, like Catalyst Collaborative Farm. There's a lot of really amazing farms that are just starting in this area that need support, that I think have been embedded in this community for a long time also. I think it's just kind of getting to know what's already here and maybe like take a beat a little bit before, I don't know, just assuming that what you think you know is the full picture. I think it takes a lot of time to kind of understand the complexities of a community like ours, and just listen and listen and listen, and like ask questions, see what's going on, and not rush into kind of like thinking that you're solving the problem yet. But I think there are a lot of amazing projects, and I just like want to uplift all the people on this panel who are doing this work and have been doing this work. And I think a lot of people around the country are looking to this little area. A lot of people in the world who I do conferences like around the world in different areas, Greece, Spain, farmers I talk to in Brazil, who are looking at this area being like, wow, there's some inspiring stuff going on. And that's amazing. So I think just listening.
Well, I mean, I think it's exciting to feel that kind of energy and to know that that's, you know, we can do that. Like it gets back to what I said at the beginning, like we actually have a capability to build a strong food system. Like we can do it if we listen, address, I mean, I don't know about the housing situation. That just seems, it's one of those very complex things that I don't see how we mitigate that and how we bring more farmers to the area, because it just seems impossible. Do you have an idea?
I just think that's all possible.
You think
We
it's
can
possible?
work on changing the housing.
Yeah. I have lots of ideas.
Right.
Yeah, Airbnb is going into like long-term rentals. People who have land putting smaller tiny houses on that property and renting them for long-term rentals. Having like multiple unit like buildings that are affordable. Like there's no one solution. It's gonna look like a lot of different things because housing is, there's, you know, some people want a single home. Like some people want to live with 5 people. Some people want to build a family, right? So we need all the ideas. Yeah.
I think that is an area then also that we certainly can be involved in, right? So I think that the zoning regulations and everything that seem very insurmountable can be like part of the skills of the group here. Like how do we overcome that to have these really creative solutions? Thanks, Maggie. Renee. Wow. When I met Renee, I was like, I don't know, how the heck do you do all that you do? She has done really meaningful work to build a food hub in Northwest Connecticut. And I have just started thinking about and researching what a food hub is. So I thought it would be good for you to share like what has been your success in building this food hub? How many farms and who are your buyers? Like just share some information because I didn't know anything about food hubs until I met you.
So we kind of come at the food access lens in a different point of view. So our main focus is working with farms and putting them at the first and foremost of every decision that's made on a daily basis. And so with that, you know, over the past 7 years, we've been able to work very closely and continue to build the ag sector. Slowly but surely it's happening. And with that, year after year, leaps and bounds, it's working. And we're all coming together and we're working together as more of a team than being siloed out as I'm in the food hub, because there's a multitude of people that are involved with it. We work with about 32 farmers throughout the northwest corner. some in Middlesex County, which is in the southeastern part of the state of Connecticut. We work with a few people over the border in Massachusetts, and that's kind of the extent and reach right now that we're at. I'm really excited to be on this panel with all these amazing people from New York to be able to bridge the connection from Connecticut and really work together as a fabric and a community to keep building everything up. Because even though there's a border in between us, there's so many of the same problems and issues. But we also, in addition to working with over 30 farmers, we have a multitude of food security programs that are funded through USDA. We work with over 16 food pantries, just throughout the Northwest corner in particular. We also work with about 8 different school districts, and the number keeps growing every single year. So pre-COVID, I was working really hard to kind of cut the red tape to be able to break into the farm-to-school access area. But as soon as COVID hit, everything, as we all know, was put on pause. And then just as of recently, everything has just started to pick back up again. And those conversations have started. And it's just been really incredible to see just the need and the demand for all of our local nutrient-dense food to be put into, the local cafeteria and have these kids actually eat an apple, actually understand where a tomato comes from. And so my farm is in Warren, Connecticut, which is about 20 minutes from here. And so, believe it or not, that's farming country, right? And to be able to drop off peaches, local peaches at our local elementary school, and even some of the kids did a taste test there, and it was the first time that they ever ate a peach. Can you believe that? And we live in the country. So there's so much work that has to be done, and the Food Hub is just, I feel, is such an integral part to it, because we take care of the logistics and the distribution and kind of are the boots on the ground to make those connections happen between, Jordan's whole organization over in New York and everyone behind me, to be able to get that produce from A to B, and then to be able to connect all the farmers in between, so that way it's a great.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing, and I could see the need for more food hubs in our area. I mean, what you do to stand in that space to solve issues for farmers in terms of logistics, freezer storage, refrigeration, trucking, distribution, these are issues that all farmers are facing every day here, and you are solving their problems. What has been the response? What are you hearing from the farmers in terms of how it's made markets for them or kept them going?
Overwhelming gratitude. As I said, when we started this program 7 years ago, I was only working with about 3 farms, and because it was such a relatively new concept. So food hubs, I want to say, kind of emerged on the scene back in 2010. And so it's not something that, a normal distribution company is. So we're doing fair farmer pricing. We only mark up a small percentage to cover our overhead and costs, but the main goal is to put the dollars back in our community and back in the farmers' pockets. So after this year, a lot of our farmers, their sales and their volume has grown, leaps and bounds. And a lot of the food that, that normally would have been donated to pantries through particular programs and different donations, we've been able to pay the farmer fair pricing and then deliver it to the local food pantries. And so they don't lose out on any of their dollars and their funding that they need to continue on and continue to expand their farming practices. So it's just been really an incredible thing. And also the food is medicine programs in Connecticut are really kind of taking off, which is something I feel like all of us have really hoped and dreamed for. So we took a 1-year pause, but we have what's called Produce RX. So we work with Charlotte Hungerford Hospital, and there's anywhere from 75 to 150 participants that have an 18-week CSA pickup share throughout the growing season, and it's all free. And so they work with their dietitians, and they're picked because they have either underlying health conditions, or they receive some kind of government assistance, or they have, children who have severe obesity. So this year the program has been really incredible because about 70 of the participants were all obese children and borderline type 2 diabetes. So to be able to track where our food is grown, to working with the local, dietitians in the hospitals to see where, how this has affected these children's nutrition is just really amazing. And to be able to bring that back to the table to share with the farmers has really sparked something incredible with them because they are more excited to expand their regenerative practices, really become more engaged in the food access, and really now open to listening to what we are working so hard to achieve in the Northwest corner.
Thanks, Renee. I think that it goes back to this connectivity and networking. You've filled this role of connecting these farmers, and I've been doing this farmer survey with Jordan, and every time I come across a farmer that works in Renee's world, they're like, I don't need to talk to you, I have Renee.
You shouldn't say that.
Talk to you. Sarah. I came to know Sarah through the work that I've done with Glenwood in the Hudson Valley. I'm on the board of Glenwood organization that they do some really important work, some you've already heard about. And through that process, I met this wonderful individual that seems to know so much about the issues that are being faced for food security. And I'm just hoping you can share with us, like on a regional level, kind of bigger picture, what are the issues that you're seeing happen and where do you see it going in the Hudson Valley?
Sure. Thank you so much. And I just have to also say I'm just in awe of everybody on this panel. You all are so incredible and you do such incredible work, and I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to work with each of you and you, Linda. I just also want to give a shout out to Chaseholm for their Home Goods CSA program, which I am a member of. And I'm so grateful that you come to Poughkeepsie, because not everything comes to Poughkeepsie, which you would be surprised about. I'm surprised about still. But yes, I think a lot of what we've heard about tonight, the kind of underlying theme has been this connectedness. And a lot of what I do through the Hudson Valley Food Systems Coalition is build trust among partners, because as Maggie said, it's best if you're kind of starting off just to listen. And you don't want to kind of wedge yourself into a system that could be working, could not be working, but definitely has people thinking about what some of the issues are. And then, of course, what those opportunities of change, of kind of disruption, of kind of, finding a leverage point to insert yourself in a way that, also kind of ignites your passion for the work that you do, brings in those variables, and helps us to understand a little bit more about, how we're working on a regional scale, which I found, has become more of a vernacular in the food system as I've been involved in it, which is, a short 10 to 12 years, so not that long. But they found, and I'm really lucky to be a part of a regional coalition that works on a national scale to bring in best practices for regional food policy councils, so how that could work, and what it takes to work on a regional scale when it comes to food systems. And what we found in that work that has been going on for the last 18 months or so, and this is a group, with partners from California all the way to Washington, D.C., all the way to the Hudson Valley. And what we found is that there's no answer. We don't really know what works best when we're working on a regional scale when it comes to food systems. But the one thing that we do know is that bringing these folks together, all of you together, and putting our heads together to solve these kinds of issues is going to give us the best chance of a solution to some of the problems that we face. And part of what we do in the coalition is help to forge those kinds of connections to go after regional grant opportunities, to engage with different kind of consumers, to understand what different communities across the Hudson Valley look like, to understand that we are such a strong voting bloc in the Hudson Valley when it comes to food systems change and food systems policies, And really, some of those insurmountable issues that we face, like our housing availability, which is not food insecurity, which is what we're here to talk about, really come from the fact of knowing and understanding that, poverty in our communities is a real thing, in our rural communities, in our urban communities. And I had the pleasure, or maybe not so much pleasure, the pleasure of working in local politics for a little while. And one of the things I learned from that experience, I was 6 years in local politics, I learned that organizing works. I learned that advocacy works. I learned that showing up to meetings, to panels, to discussions, to meeting new people who have different kinds of levels of influence in your community or don't have any whatsoever but have a voice that should be listened to, a unique voice, and have an opportunity to educate those voices as as Maggie and Rocksteady do, and all of us really do. That is the thing that I will take with me, and to a point of understanding that if we want to see something change, then we have to go to our local town board and city council meetings. We have to, try and leverage our kind of, existence as a constituent with our local policymakers, with our county policymakers, with our state policymakers, with our federal policymakers, especially when it comes to the food system. Because that then helps to influence the way that we're able to leverage power over our housing availability and affordability, and to really impact poverty. And one of the most interesting things that I keep thinking about after I've heard about it, and I'm sure all of you have heard about, and all of you, the instance of child poverty in just the last year increased by more than 50% in this country. When it dipped in 2021 and 2022, directly following the pandemic, they were like, yeah, we're on the right track. And then all of a sudden, we're seeing an increase of 50%. That then correlates to the increase of food insecurity in the last year, which we also saw take a dive following the pandemic. Why did it do that? It did that because the federal government was providing direct assistance to people when they needed it. They weren't cutting SNAP dollars. They weren't cutting the child tax fund. They weren't cutting money from people when they needed it. They saw, a crisis in front of them, and they gave people direct payments, direct cash. And what they saw were these problems dissolving. Did they go away completely? Absolutely not. But did it help people? Absolutely. So we have to wonder, and this is really relating to the federal farm bill, why are we cutting these benefits? Why are we cutting these kinds of public assistance dollars that work not just for people who need them, but to stimulate our larger economy? And why have we created two separate and divergent systems of economy, one for people who have less and one for people who have the means? How that, to me, is a question that I will continue to ask, and has a lot to do with why we're here tonight to talk about food security. And some of the issues are really just opportunities, like the programs that Jordan is working on at NWCT and other kind of forward-thinking food access organizations to say, we're not just going to put food in a bag and hand it out the door. We're going to invite our clients in. We're going to offer them choice. We're going to offer them the best quality food that they could afford, or maybe couldn't afford, but food that they deserve, but they can't get to. That is not within the community, that our farmers so thoughtfully grow, that they deserve more, as much as anyone else. So when we're thinking of, how do we fix food security in a community, we have to think of availability. I know in the northeastern corner of Dutchess County, the food availability for everyone is low, right? There's not too many grocery stores. Access to public transportation stinks. Sorry, Dutchess County. And how people without a car get to these places, I have no idea. So in order to fix that problem, this is kind of, this is relevant in an urban community too. I'm from Poughkeepsie. In Poughkeepsie, I can't walk out my door and go and get local food. Luckily, I'm a member of 9 CSAs, so I don't have to worry about that. But if I wasn't, I would have to worry about that. So the way that we can help to kind of push the lever on food insecurity is increasing availability of farm foods in community. We need to irrigate the community with fresh food, meaning in the hospitals, in the prisons, in the schools, in every institution in your community that takes food in, prepares it, and puts it out. We need to see farm foods, farmed by people like Maggie from Rocksteady Farm, like Sarah from Chaseholm, and Renee from the farm in Warren, Connecticut. I don't know your farm's name, I'm so sorry. There you go, the food hub. Okay, gotcha. That's how we need that. That's how we can impact the level and the instance of food insecurity. The same way with the housing stock, increase availability, and that has to do a lot with the zoning laws and has to do a lot with the short-term rentals. You know, if developers were thinking more innovatively, and they are to an extent, there are some developers that are really trying to kind of buck the trend of just a certain percentage of affordable housing, to think we need housing that is not just a one-size-fits-all, but that helps to kind of house the diversity of our communities and give them a shot at having a livelihood to exist, you know, amongst other people. And I always like to think of the global context, of course, when we're thinking of food insecurity, but access to food, quality food, you know, nutritionally dense food is power, right? You take that access away from people, and their power and their ability to participate in communities is lessened. So we need to ensure that we think about that when we're thinking about people that every once in a while have to visit a food pantry. Maybe not always, but every once in a while, because it could be us. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did, and actually is next. I'm all your enthusiasm. No, I appreciate it. I think it's a good time that maybe we turn it over to some questions in the audience. Anyone want to start?
I had a question about how do you believe that students in the next generation of farmers, like people in society, how do you think that we can become involved in the cause from a young age?
Does anyone want to take that? What can young people that are interested in this, what can they do to get involved in the cause?
Any takers?
I'm just going to say this is a young group who's come from Hotchkiss.
I think how many did you come? 15? 10? Yeah, I mean.
I actually think in some ways it's a similar, like Maggie was saying, like follow what you are interested in. Like it doesn't have to all look the same, right? It's like what about this is interesting or exciting to you and we really want to tap in. We work with, in our food programs, like volunteering is always an option and we love that. So is participating in our youth and teen programs at NWCT. We do a lot of work in our food pantry and food access programs and in our community gardens and on farms like Rock Steady with teens. And that is a really great opportunity to like test out the variety of ways that you can be involved, because it's hard to know sometimes. Like what is interesting is like communicating with people. Is it working with, working on the land? Like all those things, different elements speak to different people. Is it working on like creating the types of apps that we need in this environment, which is really important too. There's so many different ways, but I think just like getting in there and trying out a variety of the ways you can be involved ends up, kind of showing you where the next step is.
Question back here.
Oh, great. It's actually not a question, more of just a informational piece for you. My name's Michelle Shipp. My husband's Chris Mullins. We started a program a few years ago in 2019. Hi, Stefan. In Cornwall called Produce to the People. And one of the things we do is we go to homes or farms, and that's where the offer comes to you, is if you have produce that you want to get to a food bank but you don't have transportation, we will come and pick it up. We do it from people's homes, backyards. You don't have to be home. It started in the pandemic, so the contactless pickup at the end of your driveway. We made such a difference in August. We collected 1,000 pounds of food from farms and people's backyards and then took them to food pantries in our northwest corner. We've served some of the Northeast Community Center in Millerton and some of the other ones. But something that we can do as a community is if you have garden space, grow more than you need. Know that we will come get it from you and get it to a food pantry. Farm, we had a partnership with Marble Valley Farm down in Kent. Megan donated her seconds, the grade B's and C's that wouldn't sell because everybody wants pretty produce, not the ugly produce. She would donate it. We pick up boxes every week and get them to a food pantry. So pushing that in your community, our Ag Commission is now giving more space to us. The other problem of that is we intentionally grow for a food bank. So in our own communities, those community gardens can be really put to use. I know Warren Community Garden does a great job growing food specifically for their food banks. So they donate to us as well. So there's a lot of different things as individuals we can do to help support the process. And I just want to make sure before we go, we get our part to all of you at farms that if you ever need it, we're happy to come get stuff from you.
Thank you. Sorry, who was the hand up?
Oh, yeah, well, I was gonna add, just because of my experience as a student, that, you know, looking into like where food is being sourced, you're being fed at school. I think that's it's, you know, interesting to apply that in a public school setting and also in a school like Hotchkiss. You have a lot of agency there. People at Hotchkiss want to listen to you and hear what you have to say about that. I know Hotchkiss already has some whole programs. And a farm as well. So there's, lots of ways to get involved.
Okay, I think we have another question. Yes?
My question is for Renee, and I was just wondering if I could know a little bit more about like what you as like the food hub are doing with like local schools, because we do like at Hotchkiss we do a lot with like Salt Lake Central and like even Hoosie, more like on like tutoring and things like that. And I was wondering if I could know more about like your food insecurity program like, in that regard.
Yeah, so we work with all the food service directors throughout a multitude of public schools, and we do a lot of planning and work with UConn to do different taste testings to engage the kids in expanding their options of different types of produce, different types of vegetables, kind of expanding their lens, getting them excited at an early age to plant, to start their own garden, or to join a community garden, or to go to different farms. I've actually worked with Hotchkiss in the past by delivering some of our local produce there, so that was kind of neat. We have all these students here tonight. That's just the scope of the work that we're doing right now, and I think it's only going to grow as there's more interest and more success stories. And the future is looking really bright in the farm to school sector.
Thanks, Nat.
So I just wanted to remind everyone that Tuesday is election day, and it's very important for these specific issues with food insecurity and housing insecurity that you vote in your local election. This is an off-cycle year, but it's super important that you understand who your local representatives are and that they're helping people like the farmers and like people who have housing insecurity get what they need. So please, everyone vote on Tuesday, because it really, really does matter, particularly in small rural communities like this one. So.
Other questions?
I just want to add real quick to the vote is there's a Hickston is a community here in the Hudson Valley, and they funded with their ARP funds, they were rescue plan funding, they're funding a food systems plan for their city. So one of the things you can do in addition to vote is to ask your town board or town council or your city council whether or not there's a local food systems plan, because that's a way that you can help to ensure and even, codify that you're, as a community, there's going to be some attention paid to food security in perpetuity. And you can codify other things as well, like how you're supporting your farmers on a local level. I just got the word that the group of consultants that I'm working with, we're going to be actually doing the food systems plan for Kingston, so I'm very excited about that. And if you're interested in me letting you know how that goes, just email me. I can give you my email again.
I think we have another question here, or did you want to add something?
Thank you. You are an incredibly impressive panel, so thank you for sparing your time for us. I don't live in Copic, but I know there are plans in Copic for a multi-thousand-acre solar farm which will take agricultural land out of use. Is there any action we as a group can take to try to prevent that?
I think one of the things that you can do is contact your local land conservancy organization, or we work locally with Scenic Hudson. Scenic Hudson has a farmland preservation guide, best practices. They work, for a long time to preserve, farmland in the Hudson Valley and beyond. That's something that they should be interested in helping you advocate against, or to advocate for different solutions to putting, solar somewhere that isn't taking, arable land away from farmers when we're in need of it now. So I would look for a land conservancy organization. I would talk to your local legislature and see if that can, help to make a change. I don't want to put all the work on you, but maybe, I don't know if you have a conservancy board, in Copac. You could talk to them and see how they can help to kind of, ask for changes to the location of the solar farm.
We have time for one more question.
Great, I just want to also ask if you guys know, because I'm, in terms of environmental stewardship and wanting to create solar energy, have you guys seen any good working farms that have integrated solar with grazing? Is that common in your area at all?
It's more common with sheep than, I guess chickens too could be utilized well that way, but I know there's like a group that is working with sheep farmers to try to get solar lands grazed, but it's not widely used at the moment. And I'm always curious about that too. I raise cattle mostly, so it's like, do we make them taller or something? But also, in response, thinking about zoning and where we allow solar to be put up. I mean, like, I parked under a solar array recently, and I was like, oh, this is great. My car is not baking in the sun. This is just covering a parking lot. Like, let's do more of that. We're not cutting down enough trees. We're not putting in ag land. Like, let's think about allowing it in our more densely populated areas.
Okay, we have a last question back here.
Hi, I own a small bakery, and production is very small, but my way of participating at the moment is using my purchasing power to buy from small farms as much as humanly possible, especially ones that are regionally specific. But I'm curious if in your work you have systems in place for partnerships for chefs to participate in a more impactful way.
Well, by purchasing produce from the Northwest Connecticut Food Hub, not only are you helping just secure an outlet for the amazing local farms. And one of the great things about the Food Hub is we do all the aggregation for the chefs, for the different restaurants. And then a percentage of that produce actually goes and feeds back into the food security programs that we're working so hard to continue to build throughout the Northwest Corner region of Connecticut. So that's one really incredible way that you can help just within the Connecticut or even the New York area. So our reach is pretty far.
I don't know if it's still going on, but a New York State program that popped up again through the pandemic is called the Restaurant Resiliency Program. And it was a way to divert funds to restaurants in order to have them purchase from local farms. And they would then create a relationship and a contract with them to do so. So I would look into that. And then I know organizations like Glenwood, my partner's here and works at Glenwood, so if you want to talk to her about this, did kind of coordinate a program called Kitchen Cultivars that helped to bring together the culinary world into conversation as it relates to food systems and getting farmed foods into local retail establishments and businesses. I know one of the challenges that we've had in the coalition is engaging culinary partners. We have some culinary partners that show up to the meetings, however, they're busy. running their business. So I know, my co-founder back in 2019 was Sharon Burns, leader of Bread Alone, and through the pandemic, she had to step aside to keep her business running. So it's understandable that it's a little challenging for people in the service industry to engage with food systems work, but it is so incredibly necessary. So if you are interested in joining the coalition, once we get our meetings up and going, the website is hvfoodsystem.org. You can just hit that join button and it'll put you on a list, and it'll also ask you what kind of interest groups you're interested in participating in. I don't know if anyone else has.
I just wanted to add, I think that through the Nutrition Security Council that Jordan has formed, one of the things that has come of that I think is great, Alicia and Bridget have just started working in this area, which is it's great during the season where some of the food pantries have a lot more food coming in and it's fresh and it's wonderful, but we don't have a lot of great solutions for transitioning a lot of that overproduction into the winter. And so I know there are efforts done by some of the people here to figure out ways, and that's why I think the culinary field could really help us a lot. Like, what can we do to get this food packaged and frozen and available throughout the year?
Yeah, just briefly, in our conversations and the coalition, something that comes up very often, which is being worked on in sort of, it's their burgeoning projects, but is this idea of like, we are providing groceries right now, but in this part of the county, we're really not providing a significant amount of meals. And that's really important, both to mitigate food waste, like we have to be, as someone was mentioning there, like they're picking up seconds produce, but actually that produce isn't always the best produce to distribute at the food pantry, right? Because as we've been talking about, like with dignity and wanting, people wanting to increase their familiarity with food or increase their enthusiasm for eating fresh food, if they're getting produce that's always sort of second best, that isn't all, that's not always the signal we want to send. And so thinking, but that produce is incredibly important, we shouldn't be discarding that produce either. And producing, processing it and making meals is one of the most important ways to use it, I think. And we're always thinking about, we did a collaboration this summer with Fairfield Farm at Hotchkiss and with Alicia, who was working as a chef with our teams, and we processed a bunch of food that we're going to give out in our Thanksgiving distribution at NWCT, and it was really successful in terms of teens learning culinary skills and putting food in the freezer and mitigating some of that food waste or using some of the abundance for the season. And that was just a tiny pilot this summer, but we're looking always for collaborators in terms of like, how can we increase that food processing infrastructure. And I've gotten actually a lot of interest from the cooperative extension and from the school system, and there are people who want to do this on a big scale right now. There is a lack of infrastructure available for it, so it's definitely a project in works. I think we might be at
I'm just wondering, the food harvest program in New York City for so long has been really important. Why can that concept be adapted to our region? The idea that restaurants have food that then can be used and distributed. Is that, you're all familiar with the New York City food harvest? City harvest. City harvest is covered.
I think we're coming to close, and I encourage people to ask me more about that because I think there's so many models out there. There's food waste, there's composting programs. I think looking at the full cycle is really important, because if there is abundance in one end, let's figure out a way for that to get redistributed. I just want to make a plug for Rocksteady. I have a one-pager at the end at the table, kind of on your way out on the left, that talks a little bit more about our work. If you have any questions, I think we're going to be around to answer. We're mingling and food and delicious things. But yeah, just if you want any more information on Rocksteady and kind of our fundraising efforts that we're doing this year, it's back there.
All right, well.
but to actually mingle with each other here, share, information, dialogue with how we can really push this food security further, make it more solid in our area. But I also want you to know that the library will be continuing this conversation on January 28th. Please put that in your books. And at 3 o'clock, and we're hoping to do a continued conversation, right? Not to let this go, not to have this be a one-off. If you have not registered to come to this event, we need your information so we can remind you about this conversation on January 28th. But really, the library at Troutbeck, we can't thank you enough for coming to participate in this conversation.